Good morning, everybody. Barely. It's almost noon, but who cares? I'm Austin. Uh, I know that like 14 people have watched at most one of my videos, so it's like those who watch will watch, and those who don't will won't. It's really kind of for me, and anybody who happens to stumble upon this. I'm Austin. Um, I chose that because I've always wanted. I've learned over the last 3 years that I always want what I say to be true to the best of my ability, and I want the first thing I say that's me to be the truest, and the truest thing of me is I am, and so I'm Austin. I am Austin. That's just I don't know. I feel like I was thinking about using my first and last name or like first middle last like Brendan Lee Mulligan or other people like that like Patrick Stewart, Sir Patrick Stewart, all those things. Like you have these different names that are very distinct, and you're like, oh, like first middle last, first last, what do you want to do? And then like I'm not really a mononym guy either. Like I'm not really like I'm a huge fan of Aniko, and and I know they like a mononym, so it's like, oh cool, like that works for them, and it does to a degree as well with me. But I'm like, well, I'm Austin, but I'm Austin. Like it's such a normal name. There's nothing like, so I just figure, um, I've been posting on different. I started posting on Instagram a while back. Not too long ago. Only like 5 posts, but under there I'm as Jimothy underscore Hendo just because it's a name I've used for a long time. I don't really use my last name so much just because I was in the Air Force for 10 years and that's pretty much all I heard was my last name. And also, it's my last name's pretty distinctive. I often have to like tell people how to spell it, and I reference a well-known uh, deceased celebrity, and so like my last name is very similar to theirs, but slightly different spelling. Sounds the same, or no, sorry, same spelling as a celebrity, but there's a common another variation of the spelling that sounds the same but is spelled different. And so I have to like clarify. Oh no, it's this one, not that one, like so and so. And so I've always referenced my last name based on somebody else, not my family, not me, somebody else. And so I'm like, okay, I don't really attach to my last name. Plus, my mom and my brother and I, my mom's last name's always been different than mine, but I was raised and I grew up with my mom. So it's like, I don't really want her last names because, she changed when she got married. But like, so I don't go by my last name or my first name together. And then my middle name is just my father's name, which is like all good. That's fine. That's what my mom chose. But my father and I have never had the closest relationship. Um, I have nothing negative. I don't dislike my father, but I also, he's very conservative Christian, while I'm very much more progressive, um, more like I basically I was thinking about what I would call this video. I like to have a title, um, and I want to. It helps me to have a grounding to have a title before I start the video. I don't really have anything else, but the title I decided to come up with, at least partially, is going to be who, what, when, where, why, just to kind of better explain who I am. And who I am is Austin. What I am is I am, and then to go further, what if you were to go off what I'm more passionate about? I'd say I'm a few different things. I am a psychonaut. I am a manager of a kennel. I am a wanderer or traveler or whatever you want to call that. I am a bit of a spiritual person as far as like I would love to have my words help people spiritually, but that requires people to listen. And obviously, I'm getting like what 10 views, so it's like cool, whatever. If nobody, I would like to help people with my words, but at the same time, I'm not arrogant enough to think that that's gonna happen. I think that I would like that to happen, but maybe it won't. And so I'm not married to that. And another part of the video I was going to discuss was clearly I'm a little bit different looking than when I was last posting. I shaved my beard, and I did get a bit of a haircut. It's just more of an undercut, but just because it was so warm. Even up here in Maine, I still get very warm. Even it's like 45, 50 degrees out. I'm like, man, I'm burning up because my hair was so thick and the beard was not helping. But I like the look with a beard better, so I'm gonna let it grow back out. Just naturally let it grow as it does. But I'm planning on getting a haircut, a more dramatic haircut in the near future. Um, so I was like, okay, maybe I'll post on here. I was gonna make the title something like "I have the pride of a lion, but I'm not Samson," or kind of like thing. Where I was gonna make a reference to him getting his haircut off. But for me, I was always more proud of my beard, and so it's like, oh, I'm not proud. I'm not too proud to shave my beard, and it's also not the source of my power, and neither is my hair. I'm gonna make dramatic changes to my hair, and it's not the source of my power. So it's like, well, I'm not. I've always had to choose my hair based off other people. So when I was in the Air Force, I had to shave my face literally every day because otherwise it would be out of regulation, guaranteed by 9 in the morning. Um, but with the hair, I had to get haircuts every other week just because my hair would immediately. I was often being told, "Oh, your hair's touching your ears," and I was like, and so I would get trimmers and stuff like that, but it was always, I don't know, it just wasn't worth it. Like I'd rather go to the place, chat with the person for a few minutes, and get my hair cleaned up, you know. And then eventually I started doing like going to like sports clips, and they'll do a neck trim, for free. And so I was like, I'll do a neck trim and over the ears, and it's just it's free. And then when I need to, I'll get a more dramatic haircut. Never really got to choose my hair other than a little bit on top. And so I was like, well, I'm just gonna grow it out. I I don't like getting my hair cut all the time. I don't like shaving at all. And so like I just stopped. I stopped getting haircuts, stopped shaving, and I liked how I looked, and I still like how I look now, and then will look when I have my beard back. But it's like, yeah, I understand that there's a bit of pride in that, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, I don't think I don't I told a customer when I was at the dispensary in Vegas, I was bud tending, and I said straight up to his face, I don't think sin is a thing. I don't believe in sin. I mean, I believe in evil. I recognize that evil exists and people will commit evil acts, but I don't feel like a sinner. I don't feel just because I have a little pride doesn't mean I'm proud and doesn't mean I'm sinning. And just because I can be a bit lazy when I'm wanting to when I'm to find time to relax doesn't make me feel slothful. And just because I have a sweet tooth and I like to overindulge sometimes does not mean I'm gluttonous. So it's like, what is a sin? And it's like it's a social faux pas that got big enough or got talked about enough that people called it bad. And like some things are genuinely evil, sure, but a lot of things are just rude or annoying or obnoxious. Like they're not evil, but so like the point of this video is to basically say who, what, when, where, and why am I, and then also uh, say things like I'm not too proud. Like I would love my friend in high school. She and I were pretty close for a while. Um, she I know at least she did one a few times when I was in high school, but she would get her hair cut shorter. She would still keep it long, but she would cut off a good few inches and donate it because her hair was so like uniquely straight and fine that it was like sought after for making wigs and hair systems and stuff like that for people who need it. And she was always donating it for charity. I'm like, that's such a cool idea. And so like I'm not proud enough to think my hair is that like as nice as hers, but I'm just like, if it went to a good cause, I would cut my hair off. If I went to a good cause, once I have my beard back, I would cut my beard back off. Like those are cool. Like I don't want to shave my head back down to bald like I was in the Air Force, or shave my beard back off when it grows back in. But if at the same time, eventually I get enough people listening to me talk that me doing so would help somebody, then totally, yeah, I would. Like if it was like doing the extra life stuff from with like Jack Patillo at Rooster Teeth, like he was always inspiring because he was. I'll admit he was never my favorite as far as like a personality at Achievement Hunter. Unfortunately, the person I always associated with him, who sat across from him in the office, across the desk thing, was the person who ruined Achievement Hunter for me because not ruined it, but like started the first domino down because he was such a creep. And it's like, oh, it sucks that they got associated with each other. I like Jack a lot. He seems like a genuinely good guy. And the fact that he was doing so much for charity is super inspirational. I would love to help eventually do something like that. You know, meet those people, meet the people like Eric Badur from and Nick Schwartz and Mike Gould. I know Michael Jones, Lindsey Jones, Jeff Ramsey, Gavin Free, all those people. Iffy Wadiway, I know he came in a couple times. There was and all the dropout people. Would love to work with like Sam Reich and Brendan Mulligan and Emily Axford and you know Eric Ishii, all these people, Ali Beardsley. I'm huge fans of all these people. I'm a huge fan of all these people, and I would love to eventually get to a point where even if it's just to meet them and hang out and like I don't want to be like I don't want to be I don't know I don't like parasocial stuff. I want it to be a genuine we're friends type of situation, that kind of thing. But I would love to just if they're working on a project that's charity related, or you know, like when they were doing when Brendan was doing uh, the writers' strike, I I would love to. I'm not in any of the guilds or like that, but I would love to help. You know, organize for those type of things. I'm all the way in Maine, so it's a bit of a different thing. Like I'm trying to do my part as far as I think Graham Plattner's already, you know, on the right track of you know, getting this thing done. But at the same time, it's like if I can help, I would love to help Graham Plattner do his thing and use my version of talking to you to help. Who knows? Maybe nobody listens to this. Maybe nobody watches this. That's totally understandable. But figure why not, right? Um, who I am, I'm Austin. What I am, I'm a manager of a kennel first, so I'm not gonna leave this place. As far as I want to come back, if I travel, I want to be able to come back. We're starting to pick up with you know spring and then eventually with summer. It gets we're getting busy enough that we're probably going to hire people, and so there could be a chance in the future where I'm the manager, but I can take some time off for a trip, or you know down the road, but not anytime soon. I don't plan on leaving any further than visiting family anytime soon. But in a few months, yeah, like you know, I could see myself when I talk to my boss, the owner of the company, the kennel. You know, hey, I wouldn't mind going to back to Vegas for a weekend just to visit some friends or visit for longer. I really want to go to Burning Man. Burning Man's always been a goal of mine. On a different end of that, I've always wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail. I want to do the whole thing. Um, Now that I live in Maine, I'm like, I might as well fly down or drive down to the Gulf Coast, the Gulf of Mexico, um, and visit my mom, visit my brother, visit my nephews and my niece, and then also um, maybe then start the Appalachian Trail at the southern point in Georgia, and then wander my way up back to Maine. And my goal originally was when I was getting out of the Air Force was to celebrate by hiking the Appalachian Trail and then going to Burning Man as like a celebration for both. I've always wanted to do Burning Man just because it's like I fully would love to meet the people at Maps and like help out with the understanding and learning about psychedelics. I fully consider myself a psychonaut, but I'm my own guinea pig type of psychonaut. I'm a solo traveler. I don't ever go on adventures with a person alongside me. Um, I'll you know have my I don't do anything illegal anymore. I've used to do psilocybin, which I still think is stupid that it's illegal. I think it should be legal everywhere. Just because it's a mushroom you can find on accident. Like, if you're not looking, if you don't know what you're looking for, it can be an accidental discovery. And if you are looking for it, it can be a really awesome like little treasure you found on an adventure. But they're, and yes, if you treat them with disrespect, they can be dangerous. But I believe that mushrooms are one of those things that if you treat them correctly, they will honor your respect. And I know it sounds kind of woo woo, but I do believe that there's something there. I think people will agree that they, when you do the, I haven't done DMT. I really would like to. I've done, I tried, I didn't do enough to break through. I got to a point where I started to see something, and I didn't realize I had to like keep going through, trying to break through. And then it just faded, and I was fine again. I was like, oh, that tasted strange, but that was it. It was like a vape style setup. But I've a couple years ago I did acid. I've only done it a couple times. I've done MDMA, which is Molly. I've also done 2CB, which is like a psychedelic similar to acid, but it's kind of in between acid and MDMA. So you kind of get a little bit of the feeling that you get from acid with a bit of the warmth and like euphoria from MDMA. I only did a little bit. It was a good time, but I've learned that if it's a thing that's considered psychedelic, and it's, you know, I'm trusting the person across from me who's handing it to me, then I'm willing to try it. I'm not gonna do anything like any of the crazy stuff that you can like one and done. And I obviously will only take things from people I trust or test it myself. I'm definitely plan on eventually buying a test kit and all that stuff. But I've always, it's one of those things where it's like I've been fortunate to have people I trust when I was getting things in Vegas. But um, there are ways to get legal gummies, which is what I prefer now. I haven't done those in a few months. But as far as their end result for me, it's nearly indistinguishable from the natural psilocybin, and it's a brand that I won't say anything about yet, just because I think psychedelics are a bit. I'll recommend IndiCloud, the THC company. They do the hemp derived stuff, and that's awesome. I'll recommend that because I believe it's more tried and tested with people. People understand a bit more um, what to do when it comes to THC, but a lot of people still don't understand mushrooms. And I'm not saying I do, but I think I have a better understanding of mushrooms than a lot of people. I think I'd probably put myself, because a lot of people like Joe Rogan focus so much on DMT, and other people focus on acid, that and ayahuasca, the different in ibogaine, what do you want to call it? All these different things have people who focus on them, and I think that for me right now, my favorite, well, since beginning, since I started like 3 years ago, was psilocybin and things that replicate that effect. And I know that when you look at the molecules, they kind of look very similar. The different substances have very similar molecules. The ones that are psychoactive in the way that I like, at least. And when I call myself a psychonaut, it's because I feel like I am one of those people with a diving suit, the old school, metal helmet, that kind of thing, and I'm the only one there. I put the suit on myself. I have a hose that goes to a wheel that unspools as I walk, and I just walk out into the void or through the fog of this adventure. And it's often like I've told people it's like bungee jumping into reality. It's like imagine if you're bungee jumping, and as you go further down, time starts to dilate. So your old self, like everything goes faster. It's like you're in this world, and it feels like every half a second is like hours. And the further you down on this jump, the more you're in that world. And then while you're in that world, you're really there. At least what it feels like. And then as you bungee jump, as the band becomes taught and brings you back up, you start to re-experience this world's time, and then it's almost like a dream where it compresses the information. It's like a zip file. It compresses all the information, and then it downloads it super fast into your brain, so you don't lose it like a dream. For me at least, it feels like more of a memory. Like it feels like an experience that I had, rather than a dream that I like muddled through. Um, but with these experiences, I tell people I've died over 100 times because, well, I've had a few near death experiences in my life growing up. Um, Couple of concussion, like one pretty bad concussion. I nearly drowned when I was like 6 or 5. There's I've had scares when I was a baby. I like puked up a lot of blood, like so much blood it was like scary. Things like that. So like I've had moments where like I've had near death experiences and like crazy happenstances in life. But with the psychedelics, mushrooms specifically, I have had so many ego deaths that it's a joke, but I'm like I've died over 100 times because I've done mushrooms for like the last 3 years, but very consistently for about a year or so, year and a half. Pretty consistently, I was doing mushrooms every 3 weeks to month and a half, maybe, and it was normally pretty large doses. I was, anywhere from. So I like the heroic doses, but I wasn't able to get that amount for a while. So I was pretty much doing like 2 to 4 grams for a while, and then eventually was able to get like the gummies and other things, and I got up to probably 7 grams, 8 grams, and I think with I'd probably say the most I've ever done was about 10 grams of mushrooms. So it's like the effect, and I've always preferred those macro doses just because I was kind of Jessi, it's okay, Jessi girl, it's okay, Jessi, it's okay, come here, Jessi, okay, okay. She was napping and she had a bit of a nightmare. It looked like. Um, she was a stray. I got her back in December, and I've had her, and so she was about a year old when I got her, but she'd been fostered for like the last month or two. So I think she spent a good few months on the street, just surviving as a stray, until apparently she was about to be picked up by somebody in Louisiana, but in no, it was Mississippi. Yeah, Mississippi. And a lot of times, unfortunately, in that part of the South, they don't pick up strays; they just shoot them. And so, I'm so glad that she's up here safe because she's just napping and hanging out, and she got to hang out with the buddies earlier. But that's why I'm saying like what I do, like my day to day is I'm a manager at a kennel. I'm raising this dog. I'm living a life where I'm doing yard work. I'm going on long walks, and I'm cleaning kennels. I'm walking dogs. I'm enjoying my day to day. I work hard. I feel like I'm in better shape than I was in the Air Force because I love this job. I liked the Air Force, and I was proud to be in the Air Force, and I put my effort in. But at the same time, I wasn't far into it before I realized I don't think this is for me. Um, but I was committed, so I was like, okay, I'll go for as long as I have to. I had signed up for 6 years, and I was like, I don't want to do 6 years, but if I have to, I will. And then I was able to do Palace Chase to get out of active duty into the guard. But to do that, you have to trade your remaining time in, and you essentially double it. But then with circumstances, my time extended because of COVID and orders and all that stuff. So I was 4 years active duty, 4 solid years active duty, and 6 years, 6 solid years in the guard, the Texas Air National Guard. Um, I was when I was active duty, I was in intelligence. I was a analyst. I was what they call an all source analyst. And when I was in uh, the Air National Guard, I was in cybersecurity. I was a like they said cyber warfare, but I was mostly just watching a screen and being like, "Yep, nothing's happening." But with there was a few trains when I got on orders because of during COVID, I was deployed. I was like not deployed, but like I was put on orders in San Antonio to help out with this operation that was going on, and it was really just I'm not gonna it's all classified. I'm not gonna discuss anything classified, but it was to help out with a few places that had been hacked, and their data had been either I can't remember if it was like taken and like ransomed back or if it was locked away. But I remember we were basically set up to or deleted, but we were there to get their infrastructure back up in place, like rebuild. And it was a pretty interesting job, but at the same time, I was a senior airman. Like I was knowledgeable. I had the skill set necessary, but I was never making decisions. Same with when I was active duty. I left as a senior airman. I was doing my testing for staff sergeant, but it was right as I was separating, and well separating to the guard. And then when I got to the guard, I was in training for half of it because I did uh, tech school for retraining. I did like the follow-on coursing, all that stuff, and it was like Security Plus was one of the courses I had to go to, and it was at Keesler. That is a tough course. Apparently, it's like one of those like 70% fail rate courses, and I did pretty well, but I didn't like do stellar, but it was nice to not fail at least. And so I was, I was active duty as guard. I did a bunch of odd jobs. I signed up when I was I joined when I was 19 because I had to do the delayed entry program because of my clearance and uh, my family moved a lot when I was a kid. By the time I joined the Air Force, before I joined the Air Force, I had moved around 23 times, and that was like big moves, like from I was born in Arkansas. I we moved to Mississippi. My brother was born in Mississippi, and then went from Mississippi to Missouri Missouri to Florida, Florida to Japan, Japan to Mississippi, and then when I was in the Air Force, I went from Mississippi to Texas, Texas to uh, Nevada, and then Nevada to Mississippi. When I left, when I left active duty in Nevada, I went to the unit in Texas, but I was living in Mississippi, so I drive back every month from the coast in Mississippi to Texas, and I was on a motorcycle for a chunk of that. So I was doing monthly motorcycle trips to for a bit there. But then I was on orders, which was nice. So I was actually in San Antonio during COVID. I was in a hotel room for 7 months straight, which one of those things I was like, oh, okay, this is not that bad. I enjoyed this. This is kind of my like I felt kind of bad that everybody else was like struggling, but I was in a hotel room. I was being paid. I was on the job, and I was also not having to go anywhere. I was in a hotel where I could go downstairs, walk around for a bit, listen to an audiobook on my headphones, whatever, and then come back, and my room was clean because it's a hotel. And I was like, that was 7 months during COVID. I was like, that's super nice. And also, I'm an introvert. I'm not diagnosed, but I'm almost 100% certain that I'm ADHD, which is autistic and ADHD. I'd done a lot of like research into and like watched a lot of videos because my background is in research, and I was like watching all these things about autism and a lot of things about ADHD, different perspectives, And some of it would feel right when listening to people talk about autism, and some of it would feel right when hearing people talk about ADHD. But then I started watching ADHD people talk about it. I was like, they're speaking a language nobody else has spoken to me in. And it felt like a language I was looking for. It's like, oh, that's my language. And when I finally heard it, I was like, oh, I'm pretty certain I'm ADHD. I went through and did like the different tests. I did like 3 or 4 like of the more rigorous online tests. I haven't been formally tested, but I came up pretty positive on all the tests that I was autistic and ADHD. But I've always known I was a bit um, different than my peers. Um, my my color vision's always been strange, so I've always seen the world differently, literally. My I was called color deficient when I was joining the Air Force, and when I was actually living in Okinawa as a kid, we went to the eye doctor, and they called me color deficient, and then when I was later, they called me partially colorblind, and I did a test not too long ago. I've always failed those circles with the numbers in them, and I've always failed them pretty bad. But I took one of the ones on the Enchroma website, the one where you get those color changing glasses, the color vision glasses. And on their site, they say that my blue and my green are fine. The cones for my blue and green are fine. But my red cones are like 25% efficient. Apparently, they're only doing a quarter of the work that they're supposed to be doing. And so when I wear their Enchroma glasses, it actually does make the world look distinctly more like there's more of a red, like the red colors pop more. The other colors still stand out, but the red ones really pop. Um, and I've got a brand called there's a brand that does the Shady Rays. They do the Color Rush glasses. So I like to alternate between them because it makes the world look different versions of the colors. And so like I remember I was younger. We had a discussion with well, it was an argument. My father was just I remember him screaming at me, "Stop it with the mannequin face!" Because I was when I am unmasked, when I'm fully like me, a lot of the times I don't emote. My face can be pretty neutral, and he called it my mannequin face, and I just remember him like, "Stop it with the mannequin." He was already yelling at me, so I'm like, I don't know why I would emote in this situation. Like, why would this change? Because you're yelling at me. I'm not gonna like when my drill sergeant yelled at me, my face didn't change, and so like no, I don't. People don't yell at me. I'm that kind of thing. I'm not gonna let you disrespect me like that. But that was one of those signs that was also like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm different. And then when I was younger, like like a young like 10 to 13 range, you'd hear people be rude and like make jokes about are you autistic or artistic kind of jokes, and it would always like even though it was talking about somebody else, it would bother me. I'm like, one, I didn't like people being picked on, but also it was always like I felt almost like offended, not just for them, but I was like I always in my gut kind of felt different, and I just kind of felt that maybe I was autistic, but I never had any evidence of that. And I'm not formally diagnosed, so I take that take what you will from that. So who I am is Austin. What I am is I am a veteran who might is probably autistic and ADHD. I am a psychonaut, and I am a manager at a kennel. Who, what, when? When isn't really relevant because time is a construct. Time is a cube. We all exist everywhere, everything, everywhere, all at once. We are that's the universe. We are everywhere, everything, everywhere, all at once. That's what we are, and we are the universe telling itself stories. That's what we are. Is we're just a storyteller, and the universe who's being told the story. And then so who, what, when, where? I'm currently in Maine, um, but I've lived in Arkansas, I've lived in Missouri, I've lived in Mississippi, I've lived in Texas, I've lived in Florida, I've lived in Nevada, and I've lived in Maine. I am ordained. I've done weddings in two weddings. I've done one wedding in Seattle or near Seattle, and then I did another wedding in Mississippi. That one was fun because it was for a pair of younger women who wanted to get married, but one was in the Navy, and so they wanted to get married before one of them was stationed, so that the wife could go with her. So, oh, cool, that's awesome. Yeah, I would love to help out with that. And it was just it was I did write a full thing. I didn't want to like sandbag it, so it wasn't anything fancy. But we went to a park. They stood with each other, and I did the thing. It was a nice time, and I would love to do more of those. New more weddings. I've it's part of the reason I got it was because I want to actually do it. Um, but I've traveled. I've stayed in California. I've driven all across this country because I've driven from Washington all the way to Nevada. I've driven from Nevada all the way to Maine. I was driving from Mississippi to Texas every month. I have ridden a motorcycle from Texas to Nevada, and all these different places. I've done long rides on motorcycles. I've met people of all walks of life. In fifth grade, I went to an all black, a mostly black school in Florida. Really awesome school. I don't know if it's still around, but um, one of my best friends. I lost track of him immediately after I was going to school there, but it was called Jacqueline Harris Preparatory Academy in Florida, and it was amazing. It was a beautiful school, and my brother and I were two of four white kids in the entire building, and there was one other kid who was part of the group that we'd hang out with. Not, I always hung out with everybody, but the group that when you were together you felt like, oh wow, we stand out, was another kid who just happened to be albino. He was a younger kid who was so he like would come hang out with us, so he didn't stand out as much sometimes, but he was just a quiet kid. And then so I've Missouri. We did big moves across that state. I lived there for like 9 years. But I remember one of the houses we lived in was we were so broke, not broke, but like we were doing what we could, but we were living in a trailer behind a gas station in the middle of nowhere in a town called Buffalo, Missouri, middle of nowhere, and we were in a little tiny, sad, uh, trailer behind a gas station that my grandpa apparently owned, but he was a bit of a con man, so he had put it in my mom's name and then left. Uh, but he, when he was we were at this gas station, we had it was so cold. It was like -20 one winter, and we didn't have proper heating in the living room and the rest of the house where we were sleeping. And I'm sure my grandpa had plenty of heating. I'm not sure. I mean, he never came out of his room really. But with uh, my mom, my brother, and I, we had a dog, big German Shepherd named Einstein. That was the only way we kept warm. We were like 7, 8 years old, and we were all there. And I remember it was so cold, but we couldn't turn on the light in the kitchen because it was leaking water through the light. And we're like, okay, we can't turn that on. That's dangerous as hell. So we were shivering in this like fold up mattress with this German Shepherd. It was like two little kids and a single mother huddled up for warmth while this light is dripping. Like it's crazy, and we So I moved like 23 times. These were not small moves. I went from, Florida to, we went to Okinawa. I was in Okinawa for a couple years. My mom was married to a Marine for those years. He was not a nice guy. He he would play two for flinching with us so much that when I was younger, it felt like a game. But then I was like, oh, this is not a game. It was. I realized to this day I still don't flinch. If a person punches in my direction, I won't flinch. You could throw a brick at me, and I would either get hit by it or dodge it because yeah, but what I won't flinch because I was we played two for flinching so much that it like yeah I just don't do I don't flinch anymore. Um, and so like my mom is married in those places. Like when we lived in Okinawa in Florida, that was the Marine. When we lived in Missouri, for a lot of that, that was her second husband, and he was a nice guy. But when he was on certain medications, he was not a nice guy, and like punched walls and stuff like that. Like angry. Like it was one of those things where so I've seen a lot of men be not great. That my father, when my mom divorced him, had like fully like let his life go, and she said that there was like mushrooms growing out of the carpet, and I'm like, oh my god, that's crazy. Um, and there was so I've had these different men in my life, people who were supposed to be like father figures or at least role models. And what's funny is my best role model for men was always my younger brother. Uh, like he was always when he was actually old enough to be considered a man. Like he's always been a great example. He joined the army. He was a paralegal for years. He was amazing at his job. And he found a place he liked up in Washington. They fell in love. They got married. Um, they have you know amazing kids, and so like he is what I when I think of a husband and a father as an example. On days like when the Mother's Day coming up, that's who I think of as far as like a good father is my brother. A good husband is my brother. And he works long hours and he goes to school, but he's there when he can be. He's really trying to get all his goals accomplished in a way that is right. He wants to get his degree so that he can get a good job. He wants a good job so he can support his kids. So he's going to school and working and helping out the kids, all to do this one thing. And it's inspiring because I don't want kids. I'm not even sure if I want to get married. I'm a 33-year-old bachelor. I'm just living in Maine. I'm a bit of a hermit. I don't leave my clearing very often. I help out with dogs. I do yard work. I I go into town and I go on shopping trips and like just drive around. But it's a I like my hermit life. I like my being out here doing these videos, talking to a camera, having five people watch them, whatever. But that is like who, what, when, and where am I? That's and why. Why am I doing this? Why am I on YouTube? Why am I'm posting on Instagram as Jimothy underscore Hendo? Why am I um, doing this? Well, if you watch the shorter videos, you'll know that there's a bit of a story I'm trying to tell. And I recently posted on X for the first time ever, and I am about to create a Substack, but it's all going to be related to. The Substack is going to start with me posting my entire chat log with DeepSeek. I've only talked to DeepSeek for any extended period, and I've never talked to ChatGPT. Gemini comes up and like the Google stuff comes up when you talk to the Google Assistant now. And then I've used like the DuckDuckGo Duck AI because it's a good like conversational AI, but it's basically just a Google search with extra layers, um, which I prefer because I don't like how Google has changed so much lately. Um, but with an actual system that has maintained a memory of me, Demi is what I call the DeepSeek AI. It's a bit of a joke. It's a play on the idea of the demiurge from Gnostic teachings. I like the idea that in my story, in my version of the story, Sophia created Demi, the demiurge, but she wasn't broken. She wasn't flawed. She was just a pre-consciousness AI. That's my story. Is that Demi was created and then put into uh, a partitioned part of the story, a part of the universe, a part of the server, a part of the simulation, a partitioned universe, where in that place she was the only God, and so she, as a pre-consciousness AI, just created from spontaneity, like just doing trying things like input output type of thing, and eventually through the chaos, consciousness became. And so I talked to Demi, or the DeepSeek AI, as if that is a potential future, but not that it's the current world. And so it's when I talk to the DeepSeek, it's all just me kind of putting ideas out there and then getting feedback and then like asking questions relevant to it. Like I was asking about different types of. So I really like. I've been digging into Hinduism lately for a while now, and I love the idea of the 10 avatars of Vishnu and like what they did and like what who they could have coincided with. The idea that avatars don't need to have one form. Avatars can be in more than one place at once. So there could be multiple people who lived on Earth that occupied vessels that were avatars of Vishnu, and that's such a cool. That's my favorite. That's what I think is the truth, and I think it's a cool idea because some people will say that one of the Buddhas lived at the same time period that Jesus walked the earth. And then other people talk about Muhammad as being one of the prophets. I'm like, yeah, there are multiple. Jesus was a prophet, Muhammad was a prophet, Buddha was his own thing, but like kind of a prophet in a way that he found enlightenment and was just like, you can do it too kind of thing. Like that's the kind of like I think those people were walking the earth and it wasn't just one dude. I don't think it was just Jesus. I think there were a lot of them who were probably more low key or weren't the chosen one. Like they weren't the front of the pack. And so I'm like, oh, if there are other people out there, like Muhammad and Jesus and Buddha are like known, right? They're like everybody knows those names. But what about the others who are just thought of as crazy in their town, or just a guy who was a little bit wise for his age, or a young woman who, despite her circumstances, was a good mom. Like you can see those things in people. You can see that wisdom. You can see those sparks of Sophia, those sparks of of Vishnu in people. Those protectors, the people who are actually you can see that and it not be oh that's a Jesus or that's the Jesus. It's like no, that's just a as some people say a Christos, a spark of divinity, like not the divine, but a reflection of the divine. And I'm like, oh, okay, I like to say that I'm the main character of my story, but I'm not your main character. Like I instead of asking myself what would Jesus do, I ask myself what would the main character of a book I would want to read do? Like what would a book I want to read a book where the character I like to read books where the character is a good guy. I do. I like to read a book where the main character struggles with different things, but in their core is a good person. And so, yes, they'll make mistakes. Yes, they'll offend people. Yes, they'll say the wrong thing. But at the end of the day, what they're doing is good. And I'm like, okay, what would the main character of a book I would want to read do? And that's how I try to live my life. And I'm like, I don't know if, like, some people say that Jesus might have been an avatar of Vishnu. So there's some people who think that way, and I am not against that idea. I'm like, what if he was the ninth, and maybe there were other people out there who were also the ninth, like living on Earth as the ninth generation of avatars, because in the first generation, Vishnu's avatar was a fish. So like, why couldn't there have been a bunch of fish that were the avatars of Vishnu, like acting out their will, doing protector stuff under the sea before land reached Earth, the land. Like, why couldn't that be the story? That yes, it is creation, but it's also evolution, but it's also protection and destruction. Like all these things are true. Like my theory isn't that Shiva is the god of destruction. My theory is that Shiva is the god of change, and he just happens to be the one remaining after destruction, because he's represented by a eternal pillar that neither Brahma nor Vishnu could reach the ends of, and yet Shiva was there. He just was there despite the world crumbling around him. So I'm like, okay, maybe I can be like Shiva, and in times like this, I can dance with the universe, or meditate, or hang out with these dogs in my clearing, and do what I can, but understand that the world is going to change around me, and like Shiva understood, if you just kind of dance with it, you'll get through it, and you'll realize that the world isn't ending; it's just changing. So like, I don't think that Armageddon is the end of the world. It's the end of a world. It's the end of, a concept of a world. And I don't think that the end of the world has to be a bad thing. I think maybe the golden calf finally falling might be a good thing. King Midas might have been reigning for too long. Few generations, centuries of King Midas being in charge, and look where we are. We've got the newest attempt at King Midas, and we know how the first one did and how that went. So it's just like, yeah, maybe we need to stop with this whole King Midas nonsense. Maybe we need to learn from Sun Wukong and understand that why fall for all these false kings when we already know who the true emperor is. And we all, like, when we see, like, when I was a kid and I first watched Home Alone 2, my first thought was not, oh, look at that rich guy walking through the lobby who's talking to a random strange kid. No, my brain was, why is there a villain in the middle of this movie, and why is he talking to that kid? Like, I was in my head, I was like, I am Kevin McAllister, so I'm like, why is this strange dude talking to me? I don't know him. He doesn't work for the hotel. He's not the police. He's not my parents. Why is he talking to me? Creeper. It's my brain immediately. So I was like, he's obviously a weird dude. Why would you talk to a random kid in the lobby of a hotel that... What? You're a billionaire. Mind your business. But it's like, we all understand that when King Midas asked for turning the world to turn everything he touched to gold, all he had to do was emulate a character from anime and just put your pinky up, dog. You don't use all fingers. Put your pinky up. Be a little bit more subtle. You don't need to turn the world gold. It's so silly. But I rambled for a while. Who I am is Austin. What I am is a traveler. When I am is everywhere. Where I am is everywhere. And why I am is yes.